After School Simulator. This is a weird game where you play as like a student who you would think after school is when you would be playing that student, but no, is before school. And you walk outside your house and there's zombies everywhere, guns and swords, police and teachers run around and punch you and the other students. And a bunch of stuff. It's a chaotic game in a lot of ways, but also incredibly empty at the same time. And the reason for that is I got some caveats here for you. This isn't really a review because this is a trial version of the game that we're looking at, version 0.41 mostly. And I don't think there was a later PC release, but there were mobile versions on Google Play and iOS, and I have not played those versions, but it sounds like those versions of the game are further along. But whether you should play this game or not, I think may not really be a question to ask here, because it sounds like this is based off another more popular mobile game called Sakura School Simulator. And there's a ton of different school simulator games out there, I found. And I think they're all trying to copy what Sakura School Simulator is doing. I don't know for sure. Sakura School Simulator, the school simulator genre for me. New thing for me. I'm not familiar with this. This is my first exposure. But that Sakura School Simulator has like 100 million downloads, so it's quite popular. So in being a trial version, it's pretty incomplete. There's about 10 or so locations, and most of them don't really have anything to do. There's a few items you can buy. There's like guns, ice cream. I think there might be like some kind of like sleeping medicine you can get or something. I don't 100% know what all these things are for, and a lot of times it's hard to tell if things have been implemented or not yet. The area outside of the school seems to be the most functional. It has this really chaotic scene with like, you go out there, there's a bunch of zombies out there, and then like some police officers and teachers come in and punch all the zombies to death. And then the schools, or the students from all around the city come to the school, and they like gather in front of the area, and there's like these traps on the floor that are there to like, I think, show you what traps do, or to be testing things for traps. Basically, it's basically a debug room at the beginning, and like people just walk on them and explode a bunch and things like that. So, and you can talk to NPCs, but there's no real dialogue options and things like that. So really that's opening area where everything's just kind of weird and crazy. You can beat up other students, you can beat up zombies, you can use a gun and run around and shoot, and you can also use a sword. Like all these things, you can also get in a car and drive around as well. All these things are kind of like where the excitement happens in this game. But as you get around the game more and more, the more and more things start to break. If you want to follow like the main track, there's kind of like, if you go into the school, there's kind of like a set of missions you can do, and the text is really broken. I don't know, it doesn't even feel like Google Translate text. It feels like just pure English gibberish. But hey, props on them for trying to even put English in there. But basically, you follow a story where you go into the school. There's like some invading maybe goblin entity, and there's a magic orb who basically arms you with, I think, a handgun, or tells you where to find the handgun, and then you go and you shoot these goblins. And there's basically 5 cutscenes you can go through in this game, or five missions you can go through. And then in this last PC release, it seems to hard lock on the 5th mission, where the game will just fatal crash basically and kick you back to the menu. So you can't get very far in that storyline kind of thing. And the combat is nothing really, anything to say here. It is very basic implementation. You can shoot and you can smack things with a sword, but none of it feels particularly good. It is interesting that you can like melee and shoot at the same time, and there's no animation really set up for you to go between those things, so it's just kind of like your character animating, with a gun in their hand while they slash around and stuff like that. So when asking like what the appeal is, right, I think that individual moment when you first walk outside is probably what the game is trying to, convey to some extent. And if you go and look at Sakura School Simulator, you can kind of see that as well. Like Sakura School Simulator, from what I can tell, is just a really goofy game where you kind of are a guy, or maybe you can play as a girl as well, I don't really know. And there's just like a lot of weird things that can happen, little NPC events, and like there's a girl that like gets big and goes around like beats up a bunch of like CIA looking guys and get tiny. You could go like lay in bed with other characters. I don't know if that's a romance thing or what, but it just seems like a game that is all about ridiculousness and almost like, YouTube junk food, but in video game form. You're just gonna explore this space for a while. Weird stuff's gonna happen, and that's it. I have not played Sakura School Simulator. I'm talking about the trailer alone in this case. So, but I assume that is like what the appeal of this is. And so it almost has like, I think to some extent, like a weird, goofy, like Grand Theft Auto feel to it, of just like you can explore, do anything. You can, you know, harass the community, and no one's really going to respond except for maybe a police officer will punch you and you'll die immediately when you get punched by the police officer. So, but I assume Sakura Simulator, as somebody who is not familiar with the school simulator genre, is the market leader here. So that's probably the place that we're looking at mostly. So there's that appeal to it. And, you know, I think that opening segment does a good job of trying to do that as like a test thing. And I think it is goofy, weird. You're like, what the heck is happening as you walk outside that door? We're reviewing a like 10-second period when you first walk out this door. But I played this game for about 2 hours, honestly. And so what is the rest of the appeal? An exploring game that it's mostly broken. A lot of the town is just not there. You'll fall through a lot of voids and stuff. There's a horse and it's stuck on a wall, and you can talk to it and you get achievements and stuff. But like clearly this thing is just not, it is somebody's unfinished work. And I think that is where the appeal of me playing this further comes from, which is basically the broken nature of it. Makes it kind of ridiculous, right? And in some ways you kind of never know what will happen. Most of the time it'll be the game will crash, or a lot of time it will be the game will crash. But, you know, there's not a lot of guardrails put in place for the player. You know, there's no limits set. You can drive through the school in a car. You can go up the staircase in a car. There's a lot of just like, there's like a airport that if you follow this like little piece of geometry out, you can go drive around an airport that has like no collision, but you're there. And you can do a lot of weird things with the cars. Like the cars keep their velocity, so if you get out of the car while it's driving and then get back in the car, it'll fly off and things like that. So there's just very little regard for the player here, and it makes sense. You know, this is an unfinished video game. But I think that's like kind of the appeal, I think, is that like it is just so broken, so chaotic. You know, a lot of video games are built as worlds, and putting up as many you know, barriers and facades in place to make sure the player is not aware of just like what's happening behind the scenes, what are the limitations of this game, and what is breaking and what's not breaking. And this is just a game in a state where that's not been finished. And so you just end up in this situation where you're just playing this weird mishmash of ideas, thoughts, and items and weapons, and like so you can kind of see somebody trying to put something together, and you know, it's not quite there, but you can kind of see what they're trying to do with it. And I think that's kind of neat. So I think that's really the appeal of stuff like this, is when you just kind of sit down and play like a demo, like work in progress, early access maybe. I'm not a big early access guy, so maybe the appeal here is early access stuff, like getting to see somebody tinker away at something. But I think that's like the cool thing. So After School Simulator, go check out the mobile ones. Maybe it is amazing on mobile.